Well, gosh, hello, hello, hello. It's so wonderful to be with everybody to talk about a topic that my colleagues and I just adore talking about, and that is summer planning. We're grateful. There's a poll up. If you can just help us understand who's on here, who you are, what your background is, whether or not you're a parent or a student or an educator, what grade you're in, that way we can endeavor to make sure that we're fitting what we talk about to the sort of profile of the folks that are joining us this evening. A couple of housekeeping details as we wait one more minute for everybody to join. Housekeeping detail number one, we will be recording this and sharing the recording tomorrow. We'll share a couple of other things in that follow-up. And then the second thing is invariably, folks have questions. That's why you came. Please use, if you can, the Q&A box as opposed to chat. I am officially in charge of wrestling questions, and it'll be easier for me to do it in Q&A. I will tell you, as expert as my colleagues are, they can probably do real-time summer planning live in a Q&A box. I can't. So I'm ill-suited to give you advice on where to go, though in a minute I'll give you advice on where to look. I think we're going to dive in. Let me start by introducing myself and our incredible panelists this evening. I'm Bob Carlton. I'm a senior coach at ESM Prep College Matchpoint. I work with students and parents. Um, we have a website that has a resource called Summer Matchpoint. If you just Google it, it has a data set of over 2,000 different summer programs, and it will do a much better job than I ever could in Q&A helping you figure that out. Our panelists this evening are the people you would want to go to and have a cup of coffee with and talk about what should my wonderful student do this summer. Margot Peabody is the Associate Director and Dean of Admissions at Andover Summer, part of Phillips Academy. It's possibly the most prestigious high school program in the U.S., and she has decades of experience working with students and parents, and she'll bring that to bear. Allison Randall is also a senior coach and a colleague of mine at ESM Prep. I think she possibly could do volunteer summer planning 24/7. You'll see her passion and love for it. Jenny Evans is the managing director of Reach Cambridge, which is a pre-college program in, of all places, Cambridge, and is just sensational about helping families understand why they might consider going across the pond for a great experience. And then Riley Wieners is a college coach at ESM Prep. Boy, I've seen her in action with kids when it comes to summer planning, and she is a rock star. And she brings a unique lens because Riley read applications at a little school in Palo Alto. It's Palo Alto Community College, I think. Riley was in admissions at Stanford. And so she'll kick us off by talking very directly about what colleges tutoring sessions in summers than anybody else on this Zoom. And Michael's going to talk a little bit about why increasingly summers include test prep and sometimes academic tutoring, because for some of these kids, they need that help. That's your panel this evening. Again, we'll be sending out the recording. Please use the Q&A box and I'll try to answer what I can and occasionally bring it up. Riley, could you set the table? Could you really speak to the question that I think a lot of the parents have? And that is, from an admissions reader perspective, what actually makes a summer experience stand out?
It's the question of all questions, Bob. So thank you so much for letting me kick us off with this one. I think the first thing that I want to touch on is maybe a gentle reframe of the question itself, right? It's never the question of was this program impressive from an admission perspective. It's so much more about why did the student choose this? How deeply did they engage? What did it reveal about them, their interests, their character, or their potential goals, right? It's not so much, we're looking to tick a box of a particular program or particular topic. It's all about trying to get to know that student and really try to read between the lines of the file as it comes to us, right? So I think, a summer that stands out usually shows three things pretty clearly. The first one, clear motivation or purpose. So the why, right? Um, they have a clear reason behind them. It connects to an interest, a question, a value, fits the student's broader story, past or future in some way, and feels really intentionally chosen somehow to pull at a deeper thread, explore a different interest. It's never default or completely kind of random on the profile. The second thing I think is evidence of engagement and depth. So kind of how did the student engage while they were there? Um, sustained development over time to a particular interest or topic. They show ownership, responsibility, initiative, intellectual curiosity, and ultimately shows that they're willing to go beyond sort of minimum expectations or beyond the immediate sort of exposure they have in their local school or community. And then I think the third one is a specific outcome or change, right? So the so what, like what did this, how did this change the student's perspective, trajectory, or story in some way? Maybe they have greater clarity about interests, a new skill they can now share elsewhere with different levels of community back at their school or their peers. Maybe it's a prototype developed, a business plan fleshed out, or some kind of community impact as well. So I think and the last kind of thing is continuity. Like how does this fit with the rest of the file, right? It's not, is this student just trying to impress me? What are they bringing to this program? What are they leaving with this program ultimately? Yeah.
That's so helpful, Riley. Could you maybe give us an insider's point of view on when you read a student's file and you looked at their summer activity? How could you suss out the difference between genuine engagement and sort of resume padding? And someone who clearly did something just because it looked good to a college versus the real exceptional that schools like Stanford really look for. How do you suss that out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's the goal of admission training, really, to be reading. It's one of the easier distinctions to make, I think, because genuine engagement leaves fingerprints, right? Or has tendrils of some kind. And usually you can really clearly see like, oh, they pursued this particular interest as, something that as a way to expand on this story that happened to them in their background, or this question they have about how they can make a better impact. So I think, yeah, those tendrils and those threads that you can pull on can really kind of make an activity come to life. And often you'll see that sort of echoing throughout the rest of the application. It's not just the activity list or the resume line, right? That's a topic that they explored during that activity comes through in their writing, in their personal statement, in their characteristics as that come through in their letters of recommendation. It's sort of echoed and anchored as you gain momentum through a file. And you can, the flip side of that is maybe there's just a random impressive brand name or line on a resume that never really comes to fruition. And it's really hard to sort of locate within their larger narrative and story. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. I'm curious if you've been so helpful on being on the admissions side of the table, metaphorically. Can you switch to the college counselor side of the table? You work with so many seniors who are hearing yeses and nos, lots of exciting yeses from colleges. Can you, obviously anonymized, share with us a situation where that student recently heard a yes and that summer activity may have made the difference? It really showcased what made that student so distinctive.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I have, a lot of examples running through my mind, I think. One of the most powerful ones for me recently was a student who was doing some personal self-exploration on like self-discovery about their culture, about their background, connecting with their grandparents, and kind of discovered that a language that her grandparents spoke was slowly sort of endangered and kind of, disintegrating. She, upon like learning this about herself, then founded actually, I'm sorry. She went to Yale Young Global Scholars summer program, connected with students who had similar sort of global perspectives, global interests, concerns of a similar nature. Really left that program completely changed. I mean, I barely recognized her when I met her. She was lit up, completely inspired. She met people that she could continue these conversations with. And eventually it led actually to her founding her own nonprofit, kind of helping to revive this language and this culture and preserve this language and this culture. And it has a lot of different iterations, but I think this summer program really set the groundwork for her to take off into a new direction with new skills, new ideas, tons of different tendrils, right, on this one sort of interest that she was able to connect with through mentorships, through faculty, and through her peers. And I think even if that program itself wasn't the turning point, for the admission office, what it led to and what it changed in her and what it brought through the application eventually was the pivotal point, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Before we shift to our colleague Allison, one last question. I know you have many, many families who, when they're doing summer planning, may come to you and say, if my student does this Stanford program, is that going to give them a leg up in college admissions at Stanford? What's your answer?
Oh, I'm sorry, was this for Allison or for
No,
me?
this is
Oh,
for
the
you. This is for you
oh,
from a straddling Stanford and college coaching. What's your answer on is this going to give them an advantage at Stanford?
So a little bit, a little yes, a little no. I think colleges like to keep it in the family to a degree. But there's also the other side of the coin where they are competing with these other Ivy plus schools, and they recognize that if, a Yale admitted a student to a summer program, then they're probably strong enough for our programs as well. So it's not the end of the world if you do, a program at a competing school. I think it's so much more about how that adds to your story. And, ultimately, if you're applying to Stanford, they want to know how you're going to enrich their community and eventually, enrich their future as a program as well. So it's not so much about the name of the school. It's about the lessons learned, the questions brought into the program, and eventually how that served the student in some way. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you so much, Riley. Allison, can you start us with sort of the next question? If Riley talked a lot about the why, Allison, could you talk a little bit about the how? How should summer goals differ from ninth grade to 11th grade based on your work with students?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. I would say anytime we're talking about summer, there are some key words that really I feel like are so helpful in this process. Number one is curiosity, and this is a through line through summer, and it's also a through line through college applications. Anytime a student is being curious and pursuing that curiosity, it's always good news, even if it doesn't lead them to a place they want to stay. Curiosity and exploration are good for kids, good for humans, and ultimately give great stories to tell. Again, I always tell students, try it on and see what happens. Because ultimately, it's that reflection on the experience. You don't have to discover your dream job the summer after your freshman year, but you might try something out that helps you realize what you don't like, which is real helpful. Students always, I feel like, are a little worried about, if I do this, like, am I stuck? Like, if I try engineering, is that it? Right? Like, now I'm done, now I'm in. I'm always like, you know what? Colleges love a pivot. Humans, teenage humans, all humans are growing and changing, right? And so if you try on an engineering summer program and are like, no, thank you, and wherever that leads you, that's interesting. That's a story, right? And so I'm going to differentiate by grade, but I want to say that the through line of active exploration and curiosity is every grade. It may look different depending on a student's skills and maturity, and level of responsibility, but that's the first thing. And so the work we do with students is always student driven, driven by their interests. The best way to have a summer that isn't as impactful is for the student not to be in charge of helping figure out what they are doing. And so they should absolutely be driving their curiosity, their interests. And ultimately, an ideal situation is where they are getting to either deepen or utilize and deepen their unique gifts and talents. And so for ninth grade, so summer after eighth grade or summer after ninth grade, this is all about exploring and discovering interests. So I always ask my students, what is something that you've maybe always wondered about or always wanted to try? This doesn't have to be academic, right? I had a student who was like, what is pickleball? Like, why is everyone talking about it? I was like, why don't you give it a shot? See what happens, right? And so it's really about starting with questions, right? What energizes you? What are you interested in? What are you curious about? What is something that you wish someone would do something about, right? All of those questions. So ninth grade is really low pressure, explore, discover, reflect, right? And that's really where parents, we're going to talk about this a little later, but that's one of the key things that parents can help with is helping the student kind of process what they're doing and what they're experiencing so that they do think about it a little bit and they do start building that reflection muscle. Somewhere after 10th grade, we're looking to deepen a little bit, maybe be a little bit more intentional about skill building, maybe even activities that might be testing out a potential career, potential major. So this is a great opportunity to do, this is summer after 9th and 10th grade, especially 10th grade. If the student is going to do a pre-college summer program, this can be a great year to do that. They're mature enough to do it. They're trying on college life, maybe a little bit. And now they're testing out, do I like finance? Do I like sports analytics? I've heard, can I get an overview of all of the flavors of engineering, right? This is a great time to do that. Summer after junior year is really where we're shifting into, we've gone from curiosity for its own sake. Curiosity is still a driver here. We've done some skill building, some testing of interests as it may relate to careers and majors. Now we're looking for initiative and impact. These are students who are ready to drive something that they do and ready to make an impact on themselves and others. And I always remind my students, impact can be one person. Impact can be, I did a service project and I invited 2 of my friends to do it. That's initiative and impact. In a minute, we're going to talk about internships and but at that age, summer after junior year, we really want it to be visible that the student is going after it, that the student has chosen it, the student is seeking it. This isn't something that you could just accidentally stumble into. The student is intentional about what they're doing, how they're doing it. And in all of these cases, growth in one way or another. And I always tell students, it also doesn't have to be pretty. Sometimes growth isn't pretty. Sometimes you go to a summer program or have a summer job and it was hard and you didn't love it. And you had to deal with a lot of really challenging people, right? That's okay. That's growth too, right? And so just being able to get out there and get active in something that they're curious about that serves a need and builds skills, knowledge, or awareness. That's what we're talking about. Bob, you're muted.
One question that I think you probably tackle so many times with families is, isn't this just Google Maps? Shouldn't I just do this, this, and this, and my student will magically show up at Cambridge, either one of them, or Ann Arbor or Austin? Isn't this just, I need to do these things because it looks good to a college?
No, absolutely not. A great question. If we are letting a student's interests, skills, and abilities lead, It's going to be organic. It's going to evolve along with the student. And, when Riley's talking about a story, it really is like when you are explaining it should sound like a story. So I did this thing and it really wasn't what I expected. And so the next summer I did this other thing. And at that thing, I learned about this other thing that I'd never heard about. And then I started to explore that. And it's like this, I did this, which led me here. I did this, which made me ask this question, which led me here. And then I tried this thing. And all along the way, the student is growing and learning. And so done well, I will read like a story that honestly is very unique to that student. And when I talk about a student's unique gifts and talents and interests, like I had a student a couple of years ago who spent her life on horses. And so one of the things she discovered she really wanted to get involved with was equestrian therapy. And so that was something that, yes, anybody could have done, but especially for her, she brought such passion for it already and such skill that when she went to volunteer at the equestrian therapy place, it made a big impact because she could do all the things, right? And then she got to see another way that the skills that she had already developed could be used. And so that is that is like the gold standard of a sweet spot. And that just came from that student following a passion and saying, what else could I do with this summer, right? And then we just researched, and then we found this organization, and there she went. So it is super organic. Yeah.
Allison, you mentioned internships, jobs. I know there's a bias sometimes of a parent to say that just doesn't pop. You hear a word like passion project or hook. When does a job or an internship maybe matter more than a more formal program?
Absolutely. So those two words, initiative and impact, all about why a job or an internship matters a little more. Also, I would say jobs to one degree and internships to a lesser degree involve sustained commitment, right? You got to show up every day. You got to be around people that maybe you would not be around otherwise. And so there's a certain, I always tell students, if you can hold down a job, colleges can see that you have the skills to be a good college student. You know where to be, you know how to show up, you know how to take direction, you know how to interact with all different kinds of people. And so, and I always tell students, never underestimate the power of a summer job. And again, we're focused on summer here, but it's really when the student has time to engage. If it's winter break or spring break or whatever, it doesn't have to be summer. That just tends to be when students have a little bit more time that they could kind of play with a little bit. And it doesn't have to be like a glamorous job either. It could be bussing tables. It could be making coffee. It could be cleaning out, pet cages or whatever. And so all of those things really show maturity, responsibility, and the ability to keep showing up. Internships, Riley and I are going to talk about in just a minute too, to talk about kind of when, and maybe Riley, maybe you could jump in here and take us into like internships and what is it for a high school student, and like, how does that impact and compare?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Allison. I wanted to just also reiterate what you said about jobs. Admission officers love summer jobs or even jobs during the school year for exactly what you said: sustained commitment, accountability, showing up day in and day out. And that's something that you can't always grasp from other activities. So I just wanted to drill that. But yeah, so the word internship, I think, sounds really fancy, but it can take a lot of different shapes, right? So sometimes it's more of a shadowing experience. The student reaching out to someone in their circle that does a job they might be interested in, right? And if they can kind of self-advocate and finesse that sort of experience for themselves, that shows a lot of initiative, back to that word Allison was saying, and also a willingness to explore, a willingness to sort of get your hands dirty, to learn a specific system or a specific, industry. So I think that's the benefit of the internship. There are, of course, more formal internships where they're more sustained. It's more of a job. You might even be paid for it. Those are wonderful as well. But really just want to ground us and anchor us in the fact that none of these experiences really matter unless there's anything that unless there's something we can really leave that experience with and draw a thread from. So I think, the internship is not super meaningful unless we have tangibles, right? We can see a deeper reflection on some element of that professional workspace, tangible results, growth, efficiency, change over time, or even just a new lesson about oneself, having done the experience, right, that they can reflect on um, in their writing section. So I think I like to avoid being like, internships are better than programs here in this case, or in this case, it's so much more about what the student sort of does with it, how they approach it, and how they can show what they did when they are in that particular setting. Yeah.
Thank
Riley,
you, Riley.
you and Allison have both mentioned storytelling. Can we talk about brass tacks before we shift to the next section? And that is, where do summer activities show up in a college application? Allison, you have so many of those students fresh in your head, seniors you work with. Where do these summer activities show up in a college application?
Say the first place they show up is in the college list. And so as students are figuring out what they are interested in and they're testing themselves and exploring, a lot of times they discover programs and majors that they're really interested in, which actually drives which colleges they choose. And so that's the first place you see it, is in the choices they make as they're building that college list. Within the application, there's a few different areas. One, of course, are the essays that students write. So there's the main personal statement, and then many colleges will have supplemental essays, additional essays specific to that college. And very commonly they ask, what's an experience, or tell us about a time where you made an impact. What's an experience you had that contributed? How did you contribute? Sometimes you're responding to a quote, whatever that is. Those are always the perfect opportunity. They're asking for growth. They're asking, or what unique perspective do you bring to this college? Well, that's a great example of how maybe you either developed this awareness or skill or knowledge or perspective, or how you contributed it, right? And so those can show up in essays. In addition, some colleges will allow a resume, in which case, absolutely it goes there. But whether a college asks for a resume or not, there is an activities section where you outline how you spent your time out of the classroom, and it absolutely goes there. And so those are, and I would say sometimes, I've had students have experiences over the summer where that person then writes a letter of recommendation about the student and their experience. And so they can also show up there. And I always tell students, be authentic, but be intentional about building relationships with potential mentors as you are engaging in these experiences, so that you can stay in touch with them. And then potentially they may become someone who might write a letter of recommendation for you.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much. We're going to turn our attention now to another category of summers, a category that for many students is really exciting, and that is the more formal pre-college programs. They're set in a college or a high school. They oftentimes have a connection to the school. They tend to be really varied in terms of format and topic. And we're so lucky to have two different folks who work at incredible programs. And I wonder, Margot, if you could start us out with helping our folks this evening understand, from your standpoint, what separates a high quality academic summer program like the one you work with at Andover, from one that may sound impressive but is more resume bling rather than powerful to the student? What sets it apart, Margot?
That's a great question. And hi, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be here. I think the thing that sets really stellar summer programs apart is looking at what the deliverables are and looking at the program of study and the plan of the day. When I say deliverables, it's how is that child stretched? Are they learning to think outside the box and critically analyze? Are they in a classroom with students from all over the world whose lived experience is so very different from their own, and they're trying to come to a greater understanding together? That's where the magic happens. So, looking at who attends the program, who the educators are in the program, looking at the course content. If it's just the same old courses that the students can get at their own school, that's not going to lead to that authentic growth that both Allison and Riley are talking about that adds to the story. There needs to be a point there where the student is stretched and then encouraged to continue past that. That's where that confidence comes from. And those connections that they build, they're going to keep those forever. That becomes a whole nother community that they're a part of, that they live and learn from. In addition to the academics, do they have independent living? Is that something that that student needs? Do they want to test out what it's like to do their laundry, get to their classes, get to their meals on time, turn their lights off? That may seem small, but for a student whose goal is to get to college, part of that is, are they capable of doing that on their own? And is the structure of the program one that builds in opportunities for the student to grow in that way? I think those are all of the deliverables that you're looking for in a program that separates the spectacular from the average.
Jenny, you work with a program in the UK, and I know Riley, Allison, and I, working with students, increasingly see parents in the US consider international programs. From your perspective, being at such a high quality summer program, what do you feel like sets apart a high quality academic summer program from resume bling, from just students' activity stacking? What makes the difference from your perspective, having seen students work that you work with?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. No, it's a great question. I agree, first of all, with everything Margot said about the deliverables, and it's very much the academic part of it, if they're there for that, and the university, pre-university experience. But things like going with your new friends to do the laundry cannot be underestimated, and those sort of impacts that you can take away from it. So I think it's thinking about the deliverables, but also the structure of it as well. So how the classes are structured. Are there different things outside of the classroom, like activities, excursions, how it sort of fits as a whole, so the students can kind of think about all the different skills that they're learning and having this sort of transformative experience, both academically but outside of that, and growing in that confidence and, as you say, Alton, using that curiosity. And I think it's then allowing them to, thinking about the teachers who's teaching the courses, how dynamic are the lessons, how hands-on is the learning. Are they able to get outside of the classroom to make the most of the environment that they're in? Because that's a whole other new experience and really tangible for them to have, to make the most of the international environment, if that's there, as you say, for Margot, for the different programs and, talking amongst different students from different experiences. So I think all of those really elevate the experience and allow the students to take away so many different aspects that they can carry on to when they're planning for the future.
It's so helpful. Thank you. I'm curious for both of you, maybe we can start with Margot. Um, what do you suggest families look for when they're evaluating the rigor and structure of a pre-college program? Of course, they're going to look at cost and time and length and format, but how should they really distinguish whether or not this is a great match for their student?
It's a great question, and one that I think many families ask all the time. I think Jenny's not wrong. The first way to start is the course catalog. What are the courses that are being offered What's the content of that class? What are the texts that they're using? Are there guest speakers? What are the outcomes? Are they just a basic exam style format? Is it a project? Are they designing a company and presenting it Shark Tank style? Are they traveling to apply what they've learned to creating or curating an exhibit at a museum? Those are the opportunities. Those are the meat of the program that you want to look at. How long are the classes? Are they 40 minutes? Or are they 90 minutes? Are they taking two classes and then the rest of the day is free time? Or are they in four classes? And who's teaching the classes? Are they students are they teachers from the school or university where it's offered? Are they coming from all over? Are they co-taught? Are they team taught? All of that creates a sense of the depth and breadth of the program. And then, of course, you want to make sure that your own personal and the student's personal criteria shines through. It's very obvious when a student is there not on their own accord. That's not a match, and no growth happens because it's they're just bucking the system the whole time. If they're truly passionate and that class is offered at that place, not because that place has such and such name, but because the course in its description drew them in, they're going to find themselves in a group of 12 that are equally as passionate, and it's like popcorn. It all starts to happen, and that's how you tell a program that has high value is the depth and breadth of the curriculum offered.
Oh, that's so fabulous. Jenny, you talk to families who might have a slightly different twist on that because they're looking at travel and a different experience. How do you suggest parents look for signals of the rigor and structure of a pre-college program that would be a great match for their student?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think as Margot said, in terms of the academic, the curriculum, I think that translates whether you're in the US, whether you're in the UK or elsewhere. And I think thinking about that structure and the schedule of itself, once you've got to the place where you're going, how are you going to use that place, I suppose, to learn as well? So, for example, being in Cambridge, obviously the history and the academia and everything there, making sure that's kind of coming off the page and coming alive for your learning is a huge opportunity for the students to have that kind of tangible experience. I think thinking about the staff that are on site, not just in terms of the curriculum, but the obviously being on site residentially, where everything is taking place, the facilities, the campus, the activities. Are they doing things that are unique to that place where they're going to be? Are they able to experience that country and other places whilst they're there? Because all that's learning and growing and the curiosity that Alison's spoken about. So I think all of that just makes that kind of higher level experience, and their students will take away more when they're thinking about it for the future as well.
Oh, that's so fabulous. We're going to play a 1 minute per person round on the following question, and that is, what's a common misconception that families have about pre-college programs? I'll start and then I'll ask Jenny, Riley, Margot, and Allison to answer in 1 minute the misconceptions they see. And mine is the question that Serena asked, and that is, isn't pay to play bad? Isn't it really not valuable if a student had to pay? Isn't it only good if it's quote unquote selective? Look, parents have paid for kids to have summer camp experiences maybe since the beginning of time. It is natural to say we're going to go to this summer camp or this athletic camp. Whether or not you had to pay is secondary. What is meaningful is A, how did it advance the student story? B, how did it really connect to who they are? And C, who were they when they left that camp? How did it impact them and transform them? Allison, I'm curious, in 1 minute, what's a common misconception you hear from families about pre-college programs?
Trips that students do can't be with family members. Absolutely, they can and likely are. If a student is getting on the ground in a company or in any kind of organization, likely they know someone who knows someone because they are 17 years old. And so colleges are not worried who was the reason that you ended up at the the retail boot seller. They just want to know what you learned and who you were when you left.
So fabulous. Thank you. Um, Margot, you have worked with so many families. You see so many students and families come through your program. What's one common misconception in a minute that you want to share?
Sure. I would say there's two. One misconception is to assume that the pre-college programs is only about academic growth. It's so much more about social growth and responsibility and understanding inclusion and belonging and creating a greater worldview. That's all rolled into academic growth. That's the catalyst. That's the light you're trying to spark and then grow from there. So that's the first misconception for myself at Andover. It's also a Andover Summer is the feeder to Phillips Andover Academy. If I go to Andover Summer, this guarantees that I will be a top candidate for at Phillips Andover, and um, that's there are plenty of awesome students that come, and there are plenty of awesome students that apply to Phillips Andover, and you can't look at one as a direct feeder to the other.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much. Riley, the 1 minute round, what is a common misconception that families have about pre-college programs that you want to dispel?
Yeah, I think I've probably touched on this a bit already, but I think the biggest one for me is the idea that a program of some kind, a prestigious name of some kind, is going to be the one turning point in an application, the one thing that exists in a vacuum that, is gonna tip the scales. It's alone, the program, the line on the resume is really not gonna do that much. I think I've said that, a couple times now. It's the holistic piece, it's the storytelling, it's the lessons learned. And so I think along with that, the idea that there's some kind of formula that admission officers are looking for. It's really not usually the case. There's not boxes to tick. It's admission officers want to get to know the student in front of them, the student in the file. So yeah, I think that's the
It's
biggest one
so
for me.
helpful. And Jenny, what's 1 minute of a misconception that you want to help families who are joining us this evening dispel?
Thank you. Well, I'm going to be cheeky if I can and do two, as Margot said. So one I think is about the if you're doing a program abroad, it doesn't mean necessarily you'd want to go to university or college abroad or vice versa. I think just having that as an opportunity to explore a new space, broaden your horizons, global perspectives, that's amazing. Whether that's where you end up going to college or you go somewhere else or whatever you end up doing, I think that's really invaluable, whatever your journey is. And then I think the second one is, I think going back to what Alison said, every experience is valuable. So if you're in a class and you think, actually, I really wanted to do, I'm studying physics and astronomy, this is exactly what I wanted to do, and you get to the end of that 2 weeks and think, I really love this, but actually, I did a smaller taster course in architecture, and this is where I feel like I need to be now. And it may not be where you thought you'd started. That's still amazing to have those experiences and learn about yourself, how you want to learn, what you want to do. I think that's a huge thing to take away from these experiences and to do them now before you are going on to that next step.
Oh, that's so helpful. So, one of the fastest growing parts of summer activities that we see for students is them folding test prep into their summer plan. While more and more schools are test optional, the truth is many of them are test optional with an asterisk. These are competitive schools where test scores can make the difference. No score, no edge. And so, Michael, can you help the families who are joining us this evening understand from your perspective, when does it make sense for them to plan for summer test prep? As they're spending January, February thinking about this coming summer, how should they sort through test prep?
Well, thanks, Bob, and thanks everybody. Yeah, I do think you're absolutely right. I mean, summer has been a great time to do test prep for a long time. But we're definitely seeing an increase in that over the last 5 years, and that's really being driven by a couple of things. Number one, as you said, more and more schools coming out stating a preference for we want to see test scores. 5 years ago it was, you don't have to send them where everybody's test optional, but now we really are seeing this kind of return to, even if a school is test optional, they're really spending a lot of time looking at those scores. Scores matter. Scores are an opportunity for you to differentiate yourself from the rest of the group that's applying. And along with that is students are as busy as they've ever been during the academic year, right? And so you kind of look at the summer and you say, well, this is probably a time, this 2 or 3 month stretch is a time when you're going to have a little bit more freedom, a little bit more opportunity to really focus on this, right? When we're sitting down and we're working with students, we're always coming up with an individualized test prep plan. And I would say that 90% of the students we're working with, 95% of the students we're working with, summer plays a big, big role. There is no perfect plan. There is no great time when students don't have anything else in their lives to do other than just focus on standardized testing. And probably that's for the best. But you do tend to see students during the summer months who have more opportunity to focus, less stress going on in their academic lives, more time to focus. And what that's going to lead to is better outcomes. They're going to have the ability to schedule those regular, ongoing, weekly, bi-weekly sessions with a tutor, or do individualized tutoring by themselves, self-study. And so what we do with students is we take that summer and we say, okay, how can we best utilize that? When we're coming up with test prep planning, if you're going into 10th grade, and this is kind of the summer going into 10th grade, this is a great time for you to be doing some skill building, making sure that you have the underlying academic skills that you're going to need to be successful. If you're going into your 11th grade year, let's make sure you're taking practice tests. Let's take a practice SAT. Let's take a practice ACT if you haven't done those yet. Let's figure out which test you hate the least. Let's figure out which test you have a higher ceiling on, right? When we're doing test prep with students, we don't want them to go back and forth between SAT and ACT. We really want them to know up front, SAT is a better fit. I feel better about this. I feel more confident with this test. Higher confidence is going to lead to better scores, right? So let's make sure we're doing that work up front. And a lot of times for students, sit down and take a 2.5 hour test. The best time to do that might be the beginning of the summer to kind of determine which test is going to be the best fit for them. If you're going into your summer before senior year, it's a great opportunity to finish up the process. And believe me, SAT and ACT know this. There are test dates, June, July, August, September. They really have provided great opportunities for students to not only prep, but get your testing out of the way before the crunch of college admissions.
That's so helpful. Thanks so much. We're about to pop up a poll to allow you to say, please reach out to me and help me. And so please feel free to just tick a box and we'll follow up tomorrow. And as you do that, I want to invite each of our incredible panelists to answer the following question. When people hang up from this Zoom, what's the one takeaway that you'd encourage them to prioritize? Other than being wowed by the incredible skills and talents of this panel, what's the one takeaway you'd urge them to prioritize? And I'm going to start with Allison. What's the one priority you're suggesting?
Your student's curiosity. Engage your student in questions about what they're interested in, what they're curious about.
That's fabulous. Thanks so much. Margot, what's your suggestion for that one big takeaway?
Look for opportunities that offer authentic chances for growth, both social and academic.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Michael, how about you?
My one big takeaway, of course, is going to be about test preparation, and that's to make sure you have a plan. Make sure you know which test you want to focus on. Make sure you know how you're going to be preparing. Make sure you know when you're going to be preparing. Have that plan you can put right on the fridge so you know what you're doing.
That's so great. Thank you so much. Riley, how about your one suggested takeaway?
Margot, I was going to say authenticity, authenticity, authenticity. But I can maybe switch it up. I think encouraging students to really sit back and reflect on what their values are, who they're becoming, who they hope to become, not to commit to a particular path, but to just really sit back and think about who they are, how they want to express that, and package that on the application. yeah, and that's also how you're going to choose your activities as well.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Jenny, could you sort of wind us up with what's your one suggested takeaway?
Yeah. So I think maybe bringing all those together is perhaps also just being kind of open-minded, maybe a little bit brave and not afraid to go outside of your comfort zone of if there are things you're like, yes, this is what I want to do, be kind of true to that voice and have, have the bravery to take that step.
Okay, again, I want to thank our panelists. As a person who is grateful for the expertise of this team, I'm so grateful for them sharing it, and I want to leave you with one suggested takeaway from my perspective. Summer officially starts in 164 days. For many of us, it's cold, and that is a hopeful sign. For parents, that might be a little frightening. Have a plan. Summer planning is much better in January, February than it is in July. Take the time. Start with your students, as so many of my colleagues have said. Start with who they are, what they've been involved in, what their values are. Think about their college list. And particularly look at how that will fit into what their college list will be and the story they want to tell to a college. So, if part of their story needs to be that they have a great test score to complement maybe a transcript that isn't as good as they hoped it would be, make sure you prioritize that. If they want to spend 2 months working with mom in her incredibly successful small business, it counts and it can make a difference. If they want to go to the UK to go to Reach and have an incredible transformational experience, spend the time sharpening the pencil to see if that makes sense. So make a plan and look at how that summer plan can change your kid's life and potentially be part of the story that takes them to college. We're so grateful to spend time with you this evening. As you can tell, my colleagues and I are absolute nerds about this. We could spend another 10 hours, and that's not a threat to Jenny, who's in the UK. We could spend another 10 hours talking about the great programs that Margot works with, or the students that Riley and Allison have worked with. We love this, and if we can help in any way, please let us know. We wish you and your students a sensational spring semester, and we hope your summer plans come true and they're filled with great opportunities. Bye, everybody.